And now, it's time for the Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin.
Hello, listeners. I hope you are fitting in some good reading time as February goes flying by. Our guest today is one of my very, very favorite authors, and I'm so thrilled she agreed to join us today. Sarah Sundin is the queen of Christian fiction when it comes to World War II stories. She has 18 published novels, all of which are set around the great conflict that was World War II. I know when I pick up a Sarah Sundin novel that I'm going to find something well-researched with great characters and wonderful faith content. I cannot recommend her books highly enough if you enjoy historical romance. Sarah and I got to meet in person in 2019 at a writers' conference. We had corresponded briefly when I found out she was going to be there, and she knew me from my years of book blogging. I saw her the first night of the conference, but I was too intimidated to go up and say hello. I mean, she's one of my writing heroes. But the next day, I approached her, and she recognized me. Before I could even fangirl about how much I appreciate her, she greeted me by name and said how much she appreciated me. It was a great moment, and I'll never forget how she made me feel special. Another thing that makes me feel special, my wedding is coming up at the end of this week. On Saturday, I will be marrying the man who swept into my life last year and quickly became my best friend. We are so thankful God brought us together. And guess what? We're going to live stream our wedding. If you would like to join us through live stream, just keep an eye on my social media to find out how. You can follow me at author Erin Mifflin on Facebook or Instagram for all the details. That's enough about me for now. Let's bring in our guest. Well, welcome, Sarah. It's good to have you here today. Your new book, Midnight on the Scottish Shore, just recently released. Can you tell us what the story is about?
Yes, Scylla van der Zee is in the Dutch resistance, and she gets herself in a little bit of trouble and needs to escape. So she decides, rather impulsively, to become a Nazi spy going to Britain, and thinking that she'll just get free fare to England, and then she can disappear from the Germans and help the Allies. However, as soon as she lands in Scotland, she is captured by an officer in the Royal Navy, and he turns her in to be executed. But Britain's MI5 turns her to become a double agent, sends her back to Scotland to report on British naval activity, sending false messages to the Germans, working with none other than the same naval officer who captured her.
That sounds very interesting. He's turned her in, but now he has to work with her.
Yes, he does not trust her. So it's an enemies to lovers.
Yes. And this book and some of your other recent releases have more to do with spying or being part of the resistance than some of your earlier books. Are you inspired by the bravery of the real-life men and women of the resistance?
Oh, absolutely. They're beyond brave. I mean, I can't even imagine. I would not have the courage to do what they did. I mean, they were risking not just death, but, horrible torture and, concentration camps and then death. So the risks that they took, and sometimes without much hope of anything coming out of it, were just incredible.
It was the right thing to do, and so they did it without knowing what the result would be.
Yes.
Now, Midnight on the Scottish Shore is a standalone title. Do you prefer writing standalones like your last several books have been, or do you like writing a series that follows a group of friends or family members?
I like both. There was something epic about writing a series and being able to explore a topic and a group of friends or family over the course of, really 1,000 pages. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed tying them together, but there are some restrictions on it, which makes it more difficult. And there's something about a standalone that's more freeing. I don't have to worry about, well, what did I write about that character in the last book? And now I'm tied to that. And there's certain aspects of writing a series that are more difficult. So I'm having fun with the standalones. I think I'm a series writer at heart, and so little series bits keep popping in. So in these 3 books, so Embers in the London Sky, which released last year, and then Midnight on the Scottish Shore, and then my book that comes out next year, there are 3 cousins, and the interactions between them are minimal. So it's more of an Easter egg for current readers, or a cameo if you want to, and hopefully just little tidbits for those who are only reading that one book, that they won't feel lost or like, well, who's this character and why should I care?
So that's fun. There is a little bit of a link between them.
Yeah, exactly.
You've used many different settings in your books, from 1938 Berlin to the United States home front to all throughout Europe and even a little bit of North Africa. Do you have a personal favorite location that you've written about?
Oh, it's always the book I'm currently writing.
Oh. That's a good
Which in this
answer.
case, it is. And it's just always like, because I'm so immersed in that setting. And so right now, the book I actually just turned in is set in Jersey in the British Channel Islands. And I was blessed to take a research trip there. And it was just gorgeous. And the stories there are amazing. But now that Midnight on the Scottish Shore is released and I'm returning in my story world to Scotland, like, oh, I really loved writing that book. I loved the setting of Scotland. And that was the same research trip. I was able to go to Scotland and the Orkney Islands, and it was so beautiful. And so, gosh, it's always what I'm currently writing. I love travel. I love exploring different places, both personally and on the pages. So I get to travel. I get to extend my travel. I get to go on a research trip, and then I get to just kind of visit it throughout my story over the next year.
Yes. Yep, that makes sense. Have you always wanted to be a writer?
Nope.
Oh,
You don't hear that very often, do you?
no.
It was not my plan. I was a chemistry major. I trained as a pharmacist. I have a doctorate in pharmacy. That was my plan. Now, every little girl who loves to read dreams of being a writer at some point, but I put that in the same category as being a ballerina or a figure skater. It's like it wasn't happening. And I chose science, and I loved it, and I was doing well in it, and I had a career, loved it. I was able to work part-time with my little kids. I had it made. And then God had other ideas. And he sent me a story idea. I had little kids at the time and was working on call as a pharmacist, and I had the story idea. It actually came to me in a dream, and it's never happened before or since. And the idea was so compelling that I had to write it. And it was a compulsion. It was like my husband was worried about me.
Oh.
Because I couldn't stop writing this book. And that book will never be published, nor should it. It
Yeah.
really was not very good, but it got me started. And then after that, the ideas just kept coming. And I joke that it was as if on that day, God turned on the writer gene in my brain and said, guess what? You're no longer a pharmacist. You are a writer. So I went kicking and screaming. I knew how hard it was to get published, and I didn't want any part of that. I had a career. I was a good pharmacist. I had a great job. Why would I want to get off that train? And God he can be kind of pushy sometimes.
Yeah. He has a way of getting our attention, doesn't he?
He does. And he just kind of had to keep whacking me upside the head. Like, nope, this is what I want you to do. And I'm so glad I obeyed. I'm just thrilled that I obeyed. He had so many lessons for me, many very humbling lessons that I needed to learn, really rooting out a lot of pride and control issues. And I never would have done that if I'd stayed in pharmacy. I was happy. And he had to take me off my happy path and
Yes.
put me on a difficult one.
Oh.
And I'm really glad I did.
Yeah. I liked how you said that, how every little girl who grows up reading dreams of writing. And that's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
way with me. But for me, it was kind of funny that I always likened it to like American Ninja Warrior. Like I love watching American Ninja Warrior, and you can tell there's a great community. And
Oh, yeah.
as a book blogger for many years, looking at the writing community, I could tell that it was an amazing group of people, and what they did was so inspiring. And I was like, yeah, but just like I don't think I could ever really be a ninja. I don't know if I could ever be a writer.
Exactly.
But then there was a time when I sat down and tried it, and I was like, oh man, I love this as much as I thought I would. And so I'm still on my journey to publication and just trusting the Lord with all of these things. But yeah, it is a journey, and it's interesting to see how he brings us there.
Yes, and it's not just one path and that's what's so funny is I joke that you probably haven't heard that answer very often, but I do know other writers who went into it and that wasn't their plan. Mm-hmm. And God said, guess what? This is what you're doing. So it's my path is rare, but it's not the only one.
Right. So when did you first fall in love with World War II history?
Yeah, that's kind of hard to tease out. And my first two novels were contemporary, the ones that will never be published. And then I had an idea that was supposed to be historical. I knew it was historical just because the way it was set up. And so in my naivety, I thought, I'll just do World War II because it wasn't that long ago. And at that point, I had two grandmothers who were still living, who lived in it. Like, yeah, I got an A in history in high school. How hard can it be? And I had no idea, none at all. And I'm so thankful I didn't, or I never would have started. But I was drawn to World War II from the start just because of family stories. And my grandfather was in the Navy as a pharmacist mate, ironically, but that's actually a medic. They called them pharmacist mate, but they were medics. Now they call them hospital corpsmen. And he told stories. And his brother was a B-17 bomber pilot, and he told stories. And my grandmothers told stories about life on the home front. So I was immersed in stories about World War II. And it wasn't until I started writing that I realized how rare that was, because most of the men who came home did not talk about their experiences. That was their way of coping. But my grandfather and his brother coped by telling stories. And so I was blessed by that. And then my parents are both major readers, major history buffs. My dad always had some World War II documentary playing on TV. I always thought it was boring. But I think some of that was just seeping into my soul. And so it just felt like the natural draw for me. And once I started writing it, it was like there's so much. And I keep finding new aspects that I want to explore. So it's just been a fascinating journey for me.
So in some ways, it sounds like it came naturally, but also as something that you developed.
Yes, absolutely. So because having an A in high school history was not enough.
Right. Yeah, that's a good lead into my next question is I can tell when I read your novels that they are very well researched. And I think I once wrote in a review that I felt like I could fly a World War II era bomber just after reading your stories that had a pilot for a hero. So what is one of your favorite parts of research?
Oh, I just adore it. And it's so funny because I get totally nerded out about the weirdest things. And I think this is where my scientific training comes in handy, is that especially with World War II, a lot of it has a more technical aspect to it. And I get to go slip into my science background again. And the book I'm writing right now, the hero, or just turned in, the hero is an engineer, and he's building German fortifications so that he can send intelligence on it to the Allies. But it's all about concrete and reinforced steel, and all this. And it's just like, and I'm like, yeah, this is really interesting. My readers will love it. No, they will not love it. So then I have to tone it down. But anyway, I am curious about lots of things. I am interested in lots of things. And so when I start reading about these things, I geek out on everything. So then I have to tone it down and go, most people don't like this. I have to I have to wait to tell the story that it's enough detail that they follow what's going on, but not so much they're like, I really don't care about reinforced concrete. That is boring.
Yes.
Because it literally is, the joke about watching cement dry,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That is very boring. So I have to tone it down.
Yes. You don't want to become known as the Victor Hugo of Christian fiction with all your regressions into wars or sewer systems or nuns or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like Herman Melville with the chapters on whales.
Yes. Now, not all authors read in the genre that they write. Do you enjoy reading historicals too, or do you prefer contemporary stories?
I like both. I like to read widely. Before I was published, I read fantasy and thrillers and historicals, contemporary, basically anything. I just like to read. Now that I'm published, I read a lot of historicals, especially World War II, because of mostly, well, first of all, I enjoy it. And secondly, I get a lot of requests for endorsement or for influencing to help my friends. So I just get a lot of books in the mail or on my Kindle that are historicals, especially World War II, especially since World War II is a popular genre right now.
And so you mentioned that you did write some contemporary stories before you were published, but now if you could write anything at all in any genre, what would you choose?
If it not what I'm doing right now?
Right.
Okay, because I really like what I'm doing right now. And honestly, I don't know. Every time it's time to write up a new proposal and I have a chat with my editor and my agent, like, which direction should I go? Because I always start off with that question, not like, tell me, I'm telling you what I'm going to write. And it's like, where do you think I should be going? Should I stay with World War II or should I explore different areas? And it always kind of makes me a little anxious because if they tell me, what, World War II is on the way out, you need to switch paths, and that's a rather terrifying thought to me because I'm very comfortable being where I am, and so I'm not sure. I really like historicals, but I have done so much research in World War II that the thought of starting over with another era is very daunting. Contemporaries seem easier in a way, but I don't think I have a contemporary voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure. I'm just hoping World War II stays popular for a while.
Well, that's good though. You know your lane and where you want to stay in it, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about your writing is your character development. What are some of the tools you use to build your characters and bring them to life?
Oh, it's my favorite part of writing. And I'm actually starting to build my next story. I do, writers are either seat of the pants writers who start off with an idea and then just sit down and write it, or they're outliners. And I am an outliner. That means I get to know my characters and my plot and everything before I start writing the rough draft. And I say, for me, it's like when I go on a trip, I want to have my plane tickets and my hotel reservations and have a basic itinerary for where I'm going. And, obviously it's going to vary with the weather. Oh, it's raining today. We're going to do the museum today instead of taking the hike. But in general, I know what I want to see, where I want to go. And that gives me the security so that when I'm on my journey, I'm not worried about where am I going to sleep tonight. I feel very comfortable and I can truly enjoy what I'm seeing. And I feel that same way about the outline. The outline gives me that sense of security. Like, well, now I can enjoy the journey. And other writers, that gives them hives. Like, once they've written the outline, they're done with the story and they don't want to write the rough draft. But for me, I love that development phase. And character development is my favorite part of it. And so I'm building my next story right now. I am getting to know my characters really well. And my key part is I have a very long character questionnaire that I fill out. And it starts I say it goes up from the outside in. So basically I'm starting with what they look like, their family, their background, and then it keeps getting deeper. And I do a personality test. So I take a personality test as if I were that character. And then I read up about that personality type so I understand how that character is going to act in certain circumstances. Because I am a certain way. I am an introvert. I am an analytical, detail-oriented sort of person. I'm going to act very differently than somebody who is extroverted and lives for the moment and can't stand plans. And so if I have my extroverted, so Scylla van der Zee is very much like that. She is an extrovert. She is impulsive. She lives for the moment. She is fun-loving. She is my opposite in every way. And so I have to be careful that when she's making a decision, she is going to make decision in a very different way than I would. She's going to talk to a lot of people. She's going to choose by her gut. She's not going to make lots of plans. And so I have to be very careful that I'm not writing characters who are just like me, because that would get really boring really fast. So I want to read about that, how that type of person is going to react, and then combining that with their background and how they've lived their lives and the experiences they've had, and that's going to affect who they are when the story starts. And then I'm going to throw stuff at them. And I usually have an idea of where I want them to go, how I want them to change, tied in with my theme. And I often find that's what changes for me during the rough draft. And once again, I'm an outliner. I know my characters. I know the journey I want to set them on. But when I'm writing that rough draft, I often find that they are learning something a little different than I expected for them. And as I started writing Midnight on the Scottish Shore, I realized how deeply the concept of freedom was embedded in each of the characters, and how Scylla seeks freedom in not having any rules, not having any restrictions, not having any walls around her. And Lachlan is the rule follower. For him, freedom is in security. Freedom is in rules and in laws and in walls. And within those restrictions, he feels free. And so both of them are coming to grips with the idea that this is a false freedom. But I got to know that during the rough draft phase but by then I knew my characters really well, and I was watching how they were developing. And that's a long answer saying I love characters and I love developing them.
Oh, well, yes, you can really tell when you read the stories. That is often when I am recommending your books. I'm like, oh, you just need to read the character arc. It's so good in this one.
Oh, thank you.
Now, in your newsletter, you often include pictures of your grandson, and I can tell he is such a delight to you. What are some of the other joys in your life beyond writing?
Oh, yeah. Family is huge. We have 3 grown children, and they are just so much fun. So 2 of them are in Southern California with us. And one of them, my daughter just moved to Portland. So we're 2-hour flight from her now. But she travels a lot. So she comes visit. We go visit her. And then our grandson, who's fortunately in Southern California because I need to see him all the time. Other than that, writing is just like a full-time job. But outside of that, my morning walk is crucial. And I am not a morning person. And so, first of all, it wakes me up. It gets me out with our dogs. My husband takes one dog, I take the other. And I do my power walk. The dog I walk, he likes to go fast and he likes to go far. And so he's my soulmate there. And I love how it gets my brain pumping and the blood pumping and counteracts the effects of sitting all day.
Yes.
So my morning walk is really important to me. And obviously church. I mean, I love my church. I love our small group. I love the community that we have there. I love that when I'm at church, I'm just Sarah. I'm not Sarah Sundin, the author. I'm just Sarah. Some people read my books. Some are completely uninterested in reading at all. And I can just be me, and we can live in community. And that's so important to me.
Yes. And along those lines, is there a scripture that has been meaningful to you recently?
Oh, goodness. Oh, yeah. I'm reading through the epistles right now, and just this morning read Ephesians 1 and 2, which are just some of those beautiful literature and scripture. And Paul just writes in this massive run-on sentence about the blessings we have in Christ, and you can just see his enthusiasm overflowing. He can't even stop the sentence. He just has to keep writing because God is so awesome, and what he's done for us is so awesome, and he can't even contain it. And every time I read that section, I just have to read it like word by word because it's so deep and so true and so impactful how deeply we are blessed in Christ.
It is true. We are. And how can readers connect with you?
My website, sarahsundin.com. There's a link to sign up for my email newsletter, which is the best way to get updates from me. I send that out about once a month, a little more around releases. And I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I'm still on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it this week, though I don't really like it anymore. But yeah, look around. You can find me.
Oh, very good. I hope readers will go check out your stories. And if they've never read you before, they're going to have a lot to choose from. So that will be a treat for them.
Well, thank you.
Readers, please do go to sarahsundin.com to follow Sarah, sign up for her newsletter, and find links to her books. And like I said, if you've never read her before, you are in for a treat. You're about to discover a gold mine. And if you do read her books for the first time, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for a place to start, of course, she does have her new release that we talked about at the beginning. My personal favorites of hers are the Wings of a Nightingale series and then also the Sunrise at Normandy series. Both of those are just excellent. Although you really cannot go wrong reading one of her books. As you can tell, she's very passionate about all different aspects of writing and researching and bringing these characters to life. So please do go check her out. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin, especially if you want to catch the live stream of my wedding this coming Saturday. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter at authorerinmifflin.com to keep up with all my latest writing news. I look forward to bringing you more wonderful interviews soon. Until next time, Happy reading!
Join us next week for another episode of The Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin. If you'd like to find out more about author Erin Mifflin, visit her Facebook and Instagram accounts.